Eliminate the workplace excuse. That's what leaders do. This is the Career Blind Spot Podcast. Have you ever wondered what kind of leaders impress me? One, the host. That's who we're talking to today, Carrie Masters, CEO of St. Joseph the Worker. St. Joseph the Worker, SJW, is a nonprofit here in Phoenix, Arizona. I encourage you to check it out, especially if you are interested in hiring work-ready people that we are helping overcome barriers to quality employment. I've been on the board for about 2 years, known the organization for a while. We've done workshops, donated assessments. It's been awesome. And Carrie, not maybe a coincidence, but very familiar, big fan of investing, not in just herself, but her team. She knew about it well before we met. But I highly encourage you to check this out. It's actually about 4 months late. Carrie has done even more since then. Or I should say St. Joseph has through her leadership, which has been very exciting. But the reality is change and good culture. It sounds good in theory. Execution, a little bit different. So I think you'll really value her perspective. Check us out, sjwjobs.org, or to volunteer or donate, check us out in the show notes. Relative to your work in non-for-profit, what does it mean to be work ready?
Specifically to St. Joseph the Worker, I would say it is any individual that has two forms of identification, has the desire to put in the work and energy to sustain a quality job, and really has just the desire, right? St. Joseph the Worker is here to support them in the areas they may not have. I don't want to say qualifications, but maybe the tangible things like transportation to get to the job, or maybe it's the shoes or the uniform, or maybe simply just the interview clothes.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest thing to think of is just if you've got the desire and you've got your two forms of ID, in our eyes, you're work ready.
Yeah, and in this era of, I don't think a lot of my listeners for Career Blind Spot are, actually that's not even true. You never know. I think I'm a board member for St. Joseph the Worker, help a lot of people who are work ready. You have ID and you want a drive, we can help you, at least assuming you're in Phoenix. So I'm here with CEO Carrie Masters, who we were just you're barely 15 months, our CEO and leader visionary. I'm not trying to blow smoke, but you've done so much and so little. And long before you, St. Joseph the Worker and past board members, definitely past staff, they've done a lot. They've helped a lot of people. But two things, I'm not sure if they're necessarily your words, or integrity and quality. It's more of a Darren word, I think. But we're really trying to place people who want to work in sustainable jobs so they can, at the very least, get an apartment. But we're also talking home ownership one day. And so just a lot of times people will say, we help homeless people get jobs, which it's not true, but it's not necessarily helping the mission of the accuracy to help someone who is work ready, because there's a big difference between someone you see on the street and someone who's coming in here and actually we can place in a position. So, and we're working on, and you're leading that. So one, I'm excited. I want to ask you like 1,000 questions, so I think I'm not asking you one. Let's start with, you have made impact right out the gate. You hit the ground running. Was that when you were applying for this? Did you know already what you were going to do?
I didn't. Being interviewed for the position, the board kept asking me in every conversation, what is your strategy? And I really would walk away from that confused, because I'm like, how do I know the strategy if I don't know the business?
Yeah.
I hadn't had an opportunity to dive into the culture, the staff, the financials. I didn't have clarity on even what the current strategy was, right?
Yeah.
So I had zero clue what I was stepping into. I think it was kind of painted to me like, we've got this organization that's been around for 35 years. They are financially sound. They've got a decent sized team, and we kind of just need somebody to come in and steer the ship.
Yeah.
Not to say that they painted it as easy, but kind of in my mind and where I was at in my life, I was looking for something kind of easy. And the mission totally aligns with my past and my background and where my heart lies. It was kind of a no-brainer to join. But what I will say, and I'm sure a lot of CEOs can say the same when joining a new organization or any real C-suite leader, you don't know what you're in for till you get in it.
Yeah.
And I can say getting in it, I quickly realized that SJW really required a complete overhaul in every facet in order for us to survive.
Yeah.
And that didn't scare me at all. Really what it did is it like lit this fire.
Yeah.
And excited me because my experience and the work that I did for the first half of my life was unbelievably intense and really prepared me for war, for lack of better words. And so it kind of was like, oh, not only can I do this, but like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it swiftly. And I'm going to show the entire board, for those that maybe didn't think that I could do it, or maybe didn't think that my work in the for-profit space could translate into the nonprofit space. I'm like, not only am I going to prove it to you, I'm going to prove it to myself, but I'm going to turn this organization into an undeniable, amazing, great culture, financially sound organization that people are aware of just simply by the name. Because most people, when I started, didn't even know, well, who is St. Joseph the Worker? Are you guys related to the hospital? Are you this Catholic organization? Like, what do you do? And so just in 15 months, our brand awareness is there. And I'm super proud of that. It makes a huge difference. Not just for donors or board members or community partners, but literally for clients.
Totally. And my friend Justin Foster, he has I think it's his saying, might have borrowed it, but it's still a good saying. You got to know how to read the room and read the spreadsheet when it comes to leadership. And I think a lot of people don't do both, and they're still leaders. And not to say they can't, but or I should say they could get a lot better at it. And being someone who, we donated some assessments, so we know your style, and you were already familiar with the TTI tools, which was awesome. But I was like, oh, this is a very creative person who's going to want to, wear their heart on their sleeve, and especially knowing we offered you, or someone else offered you, I hadn't joined yet, and you were not interested. You had moved on and you were looking for something. I think easy is probably not the right word, because I think you would get bored really fast.
Definitely.
But you wanted to make something, put your dent in the universe. And also you relate to the clients of St. Joseph the Worker. You grew up with parents that less than nurturing, and you had a rough ride, but you also had resources and you found people. So to give people integrity and to have these quality placements, it's important to you. So, there's so many things that I want to talk about, but you kind of touched on this, but nonprofit as a whole, it sounds good in theory, but when you ask anyone who's worked in nonprofit, there's some stories. And to me, it's not just nonprofit. Any organization that needs to make money and requires people to do it, it has some skeletons in the closet. It probably needs an overhaul, assuming you're trying to take it to the next level. And I think I've told you this in person, but I was apprehensive when I saw not just your assessment, but even in the interview, I was like, oh, this is Steve Jobs. And do you want Steve Jobs just to maintain this, or do you want him to turn it into Pixar? And I think, in fairness to you, like, they didn't know. And so I'm new, but I know the assessment, so I'm kind of standing on that hill. But to watch what you have done, and I'm not giving you all the credit, but I am giving you the credit on connecting the dots, reading the room and the spreadsheet, fielding questions, the battle between the old version of St. Joseph the Worker and the potential version and the current version. You're a hell of a diplomat facilitator, and being in the room where it happens and knowing you're doing way more outside. We meet once a month. It was super impressive, but also I was like, oh, this is what it takes. You're not just talking about DISC, you're using it. You're not just putting people on performance, this or that. You had to let go of some people. There was some rough stuff, and I remember, didn't know you very well, but I was like, to me, you're doing a good job. It's not addressing those things. So the reason I wanted to have you on is, you're making this big impact, but you've dealt with so much, insert expletive, and that's what it takes. I don't think you can have the good vibes and the productivity without ripping off the Band-Aid and doing rehab or all the other things. So that's just a big pat on your back. But that's what the reason I want you to share more on this is because I think there's a lot more Carries out there. And we can kind of jump back 10 years. I think you had said, maybe roughly, that you've done the team stuff, but when leadership doesn't, you're like, hey, you invest this, you have good vibes, and then a boss comes over and maybe not tries to knock over your sandcastle, but they run right through it. I think you kind of got burnt out. And so I think you've always been this leader, this rah person, but you're also doing the tangible stuff, not just the team workshops, but what do we get for doing it? And so to me, I don't want to say you cleaned house, but you definitely like realigned things. And I know with our branding, even that we help homeless people. Talk about that a little bit. Like, did that annoy you? Does it annoy you that we as the board still kind of say the homeless line?
No, it doesn't annoy me, but I know when I came into the organization, I would say within 30 days, I recognized that what the board believed that we do is not what we were doing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and our mission didn't really align with the work and amongst a million other things. So kind of going into a little bit of, in your words, cleaning house, like that's exactly what it was.
Marie Kondo. You know Marie Kondo?
Yes.
Does this bring you joy or throw it away?
Yes, exactly.
And I don't think you threw anyone away, but
No.
you're like, look, this is a lot of joy, but there's a lot of stuff that probably needs to get donated.
I think there was, some repurposing. So I think what people miss is that having a high EQ is largely important when you manage people. And I love people. And I'm very, very, very good at people. And so it was coming in and evaluating the people that were already here within St. Joseph the Worker, getting them into roles that were best suited for their personality, their skill set, and where they want to be.
Yeah.
That was really important. So that was one step. The next step was, filtering out the individuals that were not in it for the right reasons. And what I mean by that is they were not in support of the organization's mission. They were not in support of their teammates and were coming in every day from a self-serving perspective and not quite fulfilling their role.
Yeah.
And so nobody likes to let people go, right?
Yeah.
Like that's terrible.
Yep.
But what I knew is that in order for me to have an organization that was going to withstand the test of time and allow us to scale, grow, and do it successfully, I needed to have the right people. And so it initially started with building out my leadership team. I needed to have a very strong, skilled leadership team that aligned with my leadership style. And so that was step one. And
real quick, that is such, there are two things that you just said that I want to reiterate for the audience. And I don't think I'm disagreeing with you, but there's a fine point. You don't have to have EQ to, I think, have results, but you have high expectations and you believe that happy people can meet those high. I think, yes, you have to have EQ. But I think there's a lot of micromanagers or all the negative things that can still get results. And that's the thing is like, it still kind of works, but that's not the vibes that you want. And to that second point, you wanted to build a team that matched your style. And that to the novice, that could be like, oh, that's so selfish. But it's like, but it's you're now driving the bus. And so why would I get someone, to me, when I'm helping companies hire, it's like, be selfish. Who's going to free up your time so you can go do what you do best or you want to do more of? And hopefully both. But if you don't hire the right person, guess who's going to pick up that slack? So I think that is where it's like, I see you doing the work to enjoy the fruits of the vision, whereas everyone has vision, but to execute it and to hold people accountable, that ain't easy. And I kind of get why people don't do it and just default to come to the office, put your 8 hours in, meet a quota, meet a whatever. I don't think it's wrong or evil. I just don't think it's business with a capital B that we could all hit if we knew the right things to do.
yeah, no, you're spot on. I think, it's about my leadership style and then my clarity on my strengths and my weaknesses and knowing that I needed to hire leadership that had strengths in the areas I was weak.
Yeah.
And that 100% aligned with our mission and also understood my leadership style. So they don't have to have the exact same because otherwise there would be a bunch of Carries on the team, right? But it was just understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses. And the other thing I'll say is when you take the time to hire individuals based on all those things. It really allowed me to empower them and trust them to do their job.
Yeah.
So I get to focus on the areas I'm really good at and can make the biggest impact for St. Joseph the Worker, and they can do the same. So now we've got a powerhouse of a leadership team that is very empowered. I trust them immensely, and they're very strong and experienced in the roles that they're in, and then building out the team underneath them. And it wasn't me telling them who to hire and what to do, but because I spent as much time as I did with them, I trusted that they knew how to hire and what individuals would thrive in our culture, because I think that's missed. You can have a team of people who come in and clock watch and they meet their quota.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. Not bashing it.
No.
But what I know is, in order for me and my team to succeed, I needed to build a culture that allowed everybody an opportunity to make an impact, specifically with the work that we do. So with this particular organization, that was part of what would allow us to become successful. So I would say, building out the team was the first probably 3 months.
Yeah.
And it was tough because you're new.
Yeah.
You're letting people go, and people have friends, and, there's chit chat and all the things. Yeah. And just having to not let the whispers and the drama, get to me and keep doing what I was doing. So that was first and foremost. And then I think that the second side of it is I am a very dominant personality. And I think sometimes because of how I look or how I naturally present, because I'm a people person, that oftentimes is stunning to people. Like, they may second guess my ability because of that. But, having grown up the way that I did, being a single mom for 23 years, and then working in commercial real estate in, a leadership role for 20 years, you kind of have no choice if you're able to survive all that.
Yeah.
But to be dominant.
Well, total, not off subject, but different lenses. When I went to therapy, and specifically intensive outpatient therapy, the COVID got me. Just the mental. There's this magic thing that happens in group therapy where, for me, most of the time it's boring, say 90%. But then every now and again, everyone's vibing and you're sharing and you're giving feedback, you're receiving it, and then someone's like, "My freaking brother should be here, not me." And it's like you realize, like, oh, and it's like, yeah, but they're not. And so you're doing the work. And, I don't know, and you don't have to say whether or not you go to therapy, but to me, that's also something that I think a lot of people, or I'm very positive that you've done. You've worked with mentors, coaches, and not just one time, not just for work, this or that. Like, you know what you want. And that's why when we first came around, you're like, this is not what I want right now. But then thankfully you can say it's divine destiny, but they reached out again and you were like, well, this is close to me. There's potential here, this or that. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues. It's not the team. It's that the leader doesn't really know what they want. I have this responsibility. I have to drive the bus, maintain the bus, put gas in the bus, da-da-da-da-da. But, like, why am I here? What is the vision? Because if you said, hey, St. Joseph the Worker, we should just be giving out bus passes. I could see the board, some of us being like, okay, but you're kind of you're evolving the vision in the same way, was it Wells Fargo used to be a delivery, but now it's a bank, these things. But that's a growing pain that not everyone's going to be on board with. And to me, like, all jobs are changing constantly, especially with technology, but even without it, but especially when you get a new leader. And I think people have this false expectation that, especially when I'm good at my job, this is what it's going to be for the rest of my life. No. If a new president comes in, you have the same job description, but it just shifted based on what they value. So you were clear on that, and you were building people, some people might say selfishly, but to me, strategically. And so to bring it back now, of what I love, and I did check with you to make sure it's okay, is you're going to leave us. You're already thinking, this is not like, oh my God, breaking news. You're just planning on the inevitable, but that I'm going to look for a new challenge, et cetera. How do I leave St. Joseph the Worker better than I found it? So talk a little bit about that, because I don't think that's most leaders going in. How do I leave my team, my people, my vision better? Like, is that just a decision you made randomly? Were you trained to do that? Like, how did it come about?
No, I think that's great. So first I'll say yes, and yes to therapy and mentorship and all that. So I've done therapy for years. I have multiple therapists that I go to depending on what it is that I want to talk about. I have a mentor, multiple mentors, in all different sectors. I have a leadership coach that I've been going to now for 8 years. I have a hypnosis therapist that I mean, the list goes on. And what I'll say is that I'm an ever evolving human being, and that will tie into your question. I can't sit stagnant. I am somebody who thrives in an environment where I'm challenged, I'm constantly learning, and I have the ability to make great impact. That really is just my purpose in life. And I've identified that. And so when I was in a career, the same company for 20 years, I had so much opportunity within that company to grow and to change. There was a lot of reasons why I left, but I think the overarching reason was that I became very stagnant in my career. I kind of hit the ceiling, right? Like I was partner, I was COO, and there was no opportunity to go anywhere from there. And I started to lose the joy that I had in my career, and really felt like with everything I've gone through in my life, I knew that like there was a greater purpose for me, and I needed to move on. And so I knew that I was never going to be in a career for 20 years again, on purpose, and that the only way that I was going to continuously grow was to go in, make my impact, do what I needed to do, and then move on to the next thing. And so with St. Joseph the Worker, I didn't go into it with like a set timeline, like, okay, I'm going to give it X amount of years and then I'm taking off. But what I've realized is that I love St. Joseph the Worker. I love our people. Like, I cannot stress to you enough how amazing the individuals that work at St. Joseph the Worker are and how important they are to serving its mission. But what I'll say is that, you know, once I kind of hit my, call it 9 to 12 month marker, I knew at that point we were at a space where the bones of the organization were stable, and process and procedure and all the things that were missing before, that they really needed, that no matter who comes in, they can still make it their own, but they've now got the solid foundation that was always needed for the nonprofit to survive and thrive in those things. And so it's been a ton of hard work. We did it. I'm not leaving today or tomorrow or, you know, even in likely even the next year or so, but it's really about how do I now build and work on my succession plan? Because here's the thing, I don't know if I'm promised tomorrow. So I want to make sure that St. Joseph the Worker, regardless of me or anybody else in our C-suite, if anything happens whether good, bad, or indifferent, that this organization is stable and has the ability to succeed. And so absolutely not shy about it. I've talked to other board members. I talked to friends and family and coworkers and all the things that I will constantly be on the lookout for my replacement, number one. I'll never pass up the opportunity to bring a replacement in the moment I identify the human being. And number two, just making sure that everything is in order and SJW is set up so that when the day comes that I move on to my next venture, that SJW is ready, there's no shock, there's no surprise, and they're set up for success. And I think that's important in any organization. I think any good leader should always be looking at how to replace themselves. And so that's what I've been doing.
And I think even if we do lose you as leader, CEO, imagine you're going to be a hell of a champion and advocate for all these other events. And I think that's my dad said this to me one time. He said, you outgrow your friends. And I was beefing with a friend. And I was like, oh, he's kind of right. But then I thought about it more. I'm like, well, the friends I really like, I'm going to fight to have the relationship. It's going to be different, but we will re-meet again. Our paths will cross. But also, I can leave it to chance, or I can decide to, hey, let me text Carrie. It's been 5 years or whatever it's been. And so in the last few minutes here, there's so many things, because like integrity, you know, you have a similar story to our clients that we help. And so the way our new headquarters downtown looks and the workforce villages, listeners, I encourage you to look up St. Joseph the Worker or follow us on social media at St. Joseph.
SJWjobs.org is the website.
Yeah.
And then sjw.jobs is our social media handle.
Awesome. And I'll put that in the show notes. So I love that, especially from the integrity. You know, and this is where I said, like, even if you know me, it's not to say St. Joseph couldn't be helpful. I've sent family members and friends. It's like we want to be, I don't think this is official, but if in 10 years SJW was like the main recruiting place, like, hey, you're looking for someone who wants to work and can be your receptionist or painter or this or that we're the Phoenix. Like, I think that's a hell of a brand, a rebrand, because we're putting quality, we're giving you people who want to work and are skilled and have support to get to work and whatever it is. But you've also really prioritized taking care of the staff, you know, and we've talked about a little bit about putting the house in order, et cetera. But why is that so important to you, the taking care of the people who do the work? I mean, it kind of sounds like a dumb question, like you're supposed to, but from where I'm sitting, you didn't just talk about it. You were about it. I was finding out what you did about it. And I was like, wow, you know? And so, yeah, like talk a little bit about more, because I think in nonprofit, people will feel like they get taken advantage of a lot. Like, hey, you don't need a raise. We're doing this. So in the last few minutes here, like what are your opinions or expectations of the workforce that is doing the work?
Yeah. So first I'll say, you know, I'm somebody who came from less than nothing, you know, literally nothing, living on the streets, abandoned homes, abandoned cars, shelters, all the things. And so also not having college education. And so in my life, I literally started my career from the very bottom and worked my way to the top. So I understand what it's like to be a frontline worker and what it feels like to kind of be in every step of an org chart. And people want to feel appreciated for the work that they do. Yeah. Everybody has a different way of desiring how to feel appreciated. So part of a good leader is identifying how your team wants to be appreciated. And I take a lot of time with my staff. I can tell you the ins and outs of every single employee that I have, and I know them as human beings. And so I think first it's recognizing that they're not a number, they're people, and that I could not do what I do, and SJW couldn't do what they do without our people. Yeah. And so, you know, we have this mission to connect individuals that may have barriers to quality employment, so that we are providing them a pathway to self-sufficiency. And we instill hope and integrity. We treat them with respect, and we're empowering them to take their life in their own, you know, in control. Mm-hmm. Well, I started to think about that, and I'm like, well, do we do that internally? Because people always, you know, blast these values on the walls and they talk about them, but they're more focused on what it looks like to the external audience, and they're not looking at it internally and basing decisions off of that. So one of the things that we did when I started is we redid our values, because our values really weren't doing much of anything when I started. So, and then I instilled those internally, and we do everything internally and externally based on that. But yes, we do quarterly outings. We, you know, we provide food to our staff. Yeah. Half the time our staff doesn't get an opportunity to take a break. They work 40 hours a week with no break. Yeah. The type of work that they're doing is so emotionally heavy that it's oftentimes harder than going out on a hot construction site and, you know, lifting. And so it was important to me, like, you guys have to take care of yourself. So get up out of your desk. There's food in the kitchen. Yeah. Go eat. And so those are just tiny little cultural things, but I think that we've done a lot, from an overhaul of benefits, the hours, to little things like food in the kitchen and going out for quarterly events. And we have rock star of the quarter and all of these different playful things to acknowledge the work that they do. And then the other side of that was paying them what they deserve to be paid, regardless of the fact that we are a nonprofit. And I think that is such a myth that is an absolute excuse to say, well, we're not going to pay you what you deserve, one, because we're a nonprofit. Yeah. That is complete BS. And so I'm like, I don't care what sector we're in. I want our staff to make what they would make doing a similar role, whether it was nonprofit or not. Yeah. And so we did an overhaul in that. And I can tell you there has been a massive shift in the way that our staff treats each other, treats the clients, how they show up. You know, in the beginning, there was a lot of turnover because we were making a lot of changes. Yeah. But the consistency in our staff it's so cool, month over month, no turnover. And the feedback from the team is like, I never want to leave.
Yeah.
Because there's opportunities for growth now. We actually have an org chart.
Yeah.
And we actually have a pathway to say, if you come in this role, but you do these things, you can grow into this role in this amount of time. Yeah. And that's exactly what we do for our clients. Yeah. So if we cannot do it for our own staff, then how can we paint the picture that we're doing it for clients coming in? And so I think that people and time are the two greatest assets that we have. And I focus a lot on how, I can't do what I do without my people. And I got to make sure that I put my time where it's best used. And I mean that for myself and my staff. So that is why putting them in roles that they are able to make the biggest impact based on their own skill set and experience means that where they're dedicating their time is bringing SJW the greatest impact.
I feel like let's talk about your assessment real quick. We're a little over, but this is good stuff. You're a high ID, or at least last time you took the assessment. So influential, dominant, extrovert, but more on the personal people side. But then you're also, I just had it here, aesthetic and social. Mm-hmm. You're like, let's create something worth creating, nuanced, but also let's help people. And you're very low traditional of like, let's innovate. And to me, when people ask me for advice on should they take a job or this or that, I'm like, look, it's usually, are you going to assimilate or innovate? Are you going to just become like them, or are you trying to do something that you want to, and it's like, what are they asking you to do? But I feel like you do both really well. You came in, you learned the culture, but now you're taking things to the potential that you saw. And I think a lot of people see, but it takes a village to do. But it's like, if you don't take care of these people, it's like you get what you pay for. You ever see the design Venn diagram? You want it cheap, fast, or free or good, I think it is. You can pick two.
Yep.
And I think the reality of like all this, if you want good vibes and high results, you have to earn it. You have to do the uncomfortable things. And I think sometimes people do the uncomfortable things and still don't get the good vibes. But it's like, that's where the numbers, and that's a whole other podcast or topic. But I think what I hear, this is a nonprofit, it's we're run poorly, so we can't give you a raise. So I can't get a raise, so you're not. And it's like, that is a reality, but not an absolute. You're like, no, we could be run better. And not just so you can get paid more. We can help more people get better placed jobs. And we can take, our minimum is $17 an hour, full benefits, full time. Yep. We're trying to get that, I think it was like 22 recently. And, I'd love to see that just continually go up, which then by default, it's like, well, who are the people who are helping get those stats? You keep performing. Hey, how do we keep you doing what you're doing? So I love it. It makes my heart, mind grow so big. But thank you. Anything to add, promote, anything at all? But there's so much more. If you have a podcast, you want Carrie, let me know, because she has a lot to offer.
Yeah, I feel like there's a million things that we could cover, Juan. If any of you are interested in either becoming a preferred business partner, so an employer that is willing to employ individuals that are extremely hardworking and have a great desire to just do hard work, please reach out. 602-755-JOBS is our main line. Again, our website, sjwjobs.org. We also are always looking for volunteers, individuals to come hang with us at our events. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I love to talk. So if you want to chat with me to learn more, please feel free to reach out. And then lastly, I'll just say that my 15 months at SJW has taught me probably more than I have brought to the organization. And I don't think that part is talked about enough, in that there's so much about people and the clients that we serve, even though that's the background I come from. I helped one of our employment specialists helped my brother get a job who was homeless. And actually last week, my other brother and his girlfriend landed homeless, and they were in here getting a job. And so the impact that I've been able to see that it's had in my personal family, my interactions with clients, the staff, the board, all the things, I have grown so much as a human being. And I'm so grateful for the experience and the ability to make the impact that I have, and the trust that the board and my staff has put in me to be able to make that impact, because without that, I couldn't have done it. So, thank you.
Thank you right back at you, because I was already excited to be a board member for all the reasons, and then you came in and I'm like, oh, I want to be a better board member. And I think that would have came eventually, but it was like now. And so, if you want to be the impact, connect with St. Joseph the Worker, connect with Carrie. Thank you for listening. Thanks for being a guest, and we'll see you for the next one.
I make this show for leaders, those who don't point fingers, but point towards ways they can do better at work. My ask for listening is you share the show on social and or with other leaders, established or aspiring. Until then, no talent, no culture, no excuses.